She was just a hole with a tantrum and a ring. It took me years to realize that cheap witch doesn't belong in my house.
People usually just call me Nate. I served abroad for 5 years, posted at a base somewhere in the Middle East. My departure from duty wasn't about being battle-weary. It's just tough to stay in the game when a helicopter wrecks your spine like it's tearing open a bag of chips. Not exactly a graceful way to bow out, is it? Getting back on my feet felt like dragging myself through endless reruns and half-hearted motivational speeches aimed at my own reflection. "Keep it together, Nate," I'd mutter, trying to take a step without looking like a broken-down robot on its last battery. I was married to Linda Jones for 7 years. On the surface, everything appeared calm, stable even. But looks, as always, can lie. Looking back, what I thought was a calm and stable relationship was probably just emotional isolation dressed up in courtesy. Linda had that constant look, like the world was always one step away from disappointing her enough to file a complaint. To be fair, though, her tuna casserole was genuinely amazing, and she somehow tolerated my near-unhealthy fixation on every military documentary ever made. I truly believed we were solid. As soon as I stopped moving like a jammed blender, I set up a private security business in Grand Prairie, Texas. I named it Iron Wall Protection because nothing says low profile like a name straight out of an action movie. We handle everything from surveillance system setups to supplying bodyguards built like they bench press trauma and sleep with one eye open. The team's solid, about 50 former military men, each with intense takes on battlefield tactics and an irrational hatred for pineapple on pizza, like it's some kind of culinary crime. We've built a strong name for ourselves. No one gets by us unless they're armed with coffee and fully stocked vending machines. We take what we do seriously, no half measures. Some guy once asked us to spy on his ex to find out if she'd moved on. We passed, politely of course, and sent him a care package featuring a selection of snacks and a printed copy of a restraining order. You want to know my strength? That's simple, making split-second calls without hesitation. It's what kept me breathing in Kabul. When shells start falling, there's no room for long debates or careful planning. You act or you don't make it. Here's the punchline. I thought combat ended when I ditched the fatigues. Turns out, real life had a plot twist waiting. I had no idea I'd be using my split-second thinking again. Only this time, the threat didn't wear camo. It wore yoga pants and listened to motivational podcasts. But we'll get to that. Right now, I'm just reflecting on how long it takes for a marriage to turn you into a TSA-level threat in your own home. Apparently, the magic number is 7. 7 years, and kaboom. "Linda," I said one morning over a plate of toast that tasted like charcoal, "you've been acting distant. Everything good?" She sipped her oat milk latte like she was auditioning for a drama about emotionally unavailable housewives and said, "We need to talk." Let me be honest. Those 6 words hit harder than a helicopter crash. So there I was, chewing on disappointment and half-burnt bread, watching my wife give me the same look you'd give the last piece of expired cheese in the fridge. Something once useful, now a liability. She set down her drink, oat milk naturally because cow's milk isn't evolved enough, and gave me the morning bombshell. "Nate, I'm bored," I blinked. "With breakfast? With our marriage?" The toast was off the hook. Our relationship? Not so much. "I'm involved with someone," she said next, as casually as if she'd switched cell providers. I raised an eyebrow. "Oh? Is this a real guy, or just someone made up for emotional leverage?" "His name is Roger Smith," she said with the solemnity of a weather report. I paused. That name bounced around in my head like a pinball of bad decisions until it hit the jackpot. "Wait, Roger Smith? As in the Roger who got his nose remodeled by that guy. Ben, right? Walked in on Roger and his wife Kathy? That Roger?" She blushed like wine spilled on white carpet. "Yeah," she muttered. "That one." I leaned back, whistling low. "Man, you really picked a winner. Was the guy who got kicked out of Chuck E. Cheese for flirting with the animatronics unavailable?" She glared. "It's not about love." "Well, thank God," I said. For a second, I thought this was going to hurt. But no, just good old-fashioned physical betrayal. Much more comforting. She folded her arms across her chest. "I still care about you, Nate. Roger meets certain needs." "Needs?" I echoed, lowering my mug. "What are we talking here? Leather masks and code words? Or does he just let you give movie commentary mid-scene?" "I'm being upfront," she said, like she was accepting an award for moral courage. "You'd have found out soon anyway." "True," I nodded. Especially since Roger's the kind of guy who ends up in a hospital the moment a husband walks in with a baseball bat and repressed trauma. I crossed my arms. How long's this been going on? She hesitated. Well, while you were deployed. Which one? The Middle East. You do know I was deployed there for 5 years, right? She looked everywhere but at me. Yes. I nodded slowly. So, while I was dodging bullets and patching myself up, you were busy getting reacquainted with Roger. And it started up again 3 weeks ago, she added quietly. 3 weeks? I repeated, laughing under my breath. Just long enough for a love montage and betrayal reboot. She looked down. I didn't mean for it to continue. Right, I said. Just like how you don't mean to go to the store for shampoo and come back with a lawn set. Except this time the shampoo is infidelity, and the patio furniture is Roger's dumb face. The room stayed still for what felt like ages. Just the two of us, and the quiet thrum of my tolerance catching a cab and heading for the hills. So you claim to love me, I said, rising to my feet. But Roger's your outlet. She gave the slightest nod. You realize I run a security company, right? I asked, my voice even. 50 hardened veterans on staff. Do you have any idea how easy it'd be for one of them to accidentally tail Roger home? Her eyes flicked, blinked. Relax, I added with a half smile. I'm mostly joking. She kept staring at me, maybe waiting for a meltdown. But I wasn't that guy, not anymore. War had trained me to stay cool when things combust, apparently even when that thing is my marriage. So I said, measured and flat, What are you trying to get from me, Linda? She looked nearly serene, like we were chatting about a shopping list, not her blatant betrayal. I want everything to stay as it is, she said. You and me still together. Married. You remain my husband, and I get to keep seeing Roger. She said it like she was suggesting a dinner menu. I squinted. You mean, like, officially? Yes, she said evenly. I've thought it through. I stay grounded with you. You get closeness? Roger gives me the excitement I crave. It's a balanced setup. I tilted my head like I was checking for a hidden mic, waiting for someone to yell, Surprise! This is all a social experiment. Let me get this straight, I said. You want me to stick around, pay the mortgage, mow the yard, and turn a blind eye while you keep sneaking off with a man who probably loses arguments with revolving doors? And in return, I get, you in bed? Yes, she replied in that tone usually reserved for instructing toddlers not to touch hot stoves. It's a grown-up solution. I couldn't stop myself. I laughed. Not a normal laugh. The kind you let out when you've stepped on a metaphorical grenade and figure, screw it, might as well see where this goes. And what happens if I say no? I asked, arms folded. Her smile evaporated. Then I file for divorce, she snapped. Oh, shocking, I said, eyebrows up. I thought this was all about soulmates and Roger's enchanted manhood. I've already talked to an attorney, she said, her voice turning ice cold. If you resist, I'll claim emotional mistreatment, maltreatment, intimidation, you name it. I'll ruin you, Nathan. Your career, your reputation, gone. She leaned forward, icy and direct. So get in line. Be the good soldier. Obey. Be the good soldier. That one hit harder than it should have. And just like a script written by an overzealous drama student, the doorbell chimed. Linda stood up, graceful as if she were walking into a courtroom with a winning hand. Enter Roger. Yes, that Roger, wearing jeans that did zero favors for his dignity and a smug grin that made me want to sneeze on his vibe. He flopped onto the couch like he was trying out for worst guest of the year. And the smell? Axe body spray. Of course. Sup, Nate? He nodded like we were bar buddies. No bad blood, right? I kept my mouth shut. Linda cozied up next to him and clasped his hand like we were about to host a reality show titled My Marriage, My Side Piece, and Me. We're hoping you'll be sensible, she said sweetly. This arrangement works better for everyone. I smiled. Not because I agreed, but because the gears of their downfall were already turning. Excuse me a moment, I said, pulling out my phone. I've got a couple of calls to make. I walked calmly to the bedroom, shutting the door behind me with quiet precision. 3 calls, no hesitation. First, my mother. Because if there's one person more terrifying than Linda with a mission, it's my mom with a file folder and a stack of receipts dating back to 1993. Hey, Ma, I said casually. I'm watching my soaps, she replied without missing a beat. Just a quick one. I'm divorcing Linda. Brief silence, then, Finally, want me to send the invoice for back rent? You read my mind. Second call, Duncan, my right-hand man, ex-infantry, built like a bunker. Bakes a mean lasagna, shoots better than he cooks. Duncan, I said. I need you here. Bring Warmonger and Viper. A pause. It's that serious? Worse, and bring snacks. This is going to be apocalyptic. Final call, Ron Jeremy. Not that Ron Jeremy. Hours, the lawyer, part-time DJ, full-time courtroom terror, the kind of guy who makes judges reach for their tums. Ron, I asked, still handling drama-drenched, low IQ divorce cases? I thrive on it, he replied instantly. Sending you the details. Please bring papers, sharp ones. I returned to the living room, laptop under my arm like it was a sacred scroll. Sat down opposite the happy couple who looked a little too relaxed for what was coming. My attorney's on his way, I said coolly. We're signing divorce documents tonight. Linda blinked, stunned. Wait, seriously? Roger kicked back like he was watching the series finale of Marriage Meltdown. You said you wanted freedom, I told her, tapping on my keyboard. Congrats, you're getting it. Her voice erupted into a high-pitched, chaotic blend of threats and fury. I'll take your business, your savings, even the house, you smug jerk. That's adorable, I said. Did you rehearse that in the mirror? It didn't stop. 20 more minutes of melodrama, finger-pointing, and enough screeching to summon wildlife. Then, as if on cue, ding-dong. I stood, walked to the door, and opened it to reveal none other than Ronald Avery Esquio, dressed like courtroom royalty in a custom suit and reflective shades, because subtlety clearly wasn't on today's agenda. We clasped hands. Ron, I greeted. Nate, he nodded back. Then he caught sight of Roger lounging on my couch, and a predatory grin spread across his face like a crocodile spotting an injured duck. Well, look who it is, Ron said with a chuckle. Roger, right? My buddy Ben sends his regards. Roger instantly froze like someone hit pause on his dignity and memory all at once. I returned to my seat and fired up my laptop. Linda, I said, our shared funds? Gone. All of it. Her expression collapsed faster than hotel Wi-Fi on a stormy night. What do you mean gone? She demanded. I scrolled calmly. Turns out this house isn't in my name. It's been under my mom's ownership since day one. She's now decided she wants back rent, 7 years worth. Ron gave a knowing smirk. And the source of that rent? I pointed to the screen. Every dollar came from our joint account, cleared it out. Paid in full to my dear old landlady, who, by the way, bakes a banana loaf that could win awards. Linda exploded with a string of insults, threats, and unhinged vocabulary. Roger sat silently, looking like someone who walked into the wrong courtroom mid-trial. Ron? I asked. You bring the paperwork? He passed over a thick folder. I began signing with theatrical ease, like I was sealing a business deal in front of an audience. Linda stared, torn between rage and disbelief. Then I looked at her and added casually, Oh, and I moved ownership of the company. Her face brightened. Wait, seriously? To me? She was halfway to a smile. I stared straight at her. It's yours, every bit of it, once you agree to end this marriage. Her expression froze like a busted screen on a bad Zoom call. No divorce, no business, I added sweetly. You wanted the wheel? Well, here's your car. Door number 1. Enjoy Roger, the human puddle, and a business you have zero idea how to manage. Door number 2. Fight me, lose everything, and deal with a legal battle that'll outlive your hair extensions. Oh, and my mom? She'll sue you so hard for back rent that even your perfume bottle will file for unemployment. Ron leaned forward slightly. Just know, I don't do discounts. I leaned back in my chair, sipping from my mug, watching Linda's brain run simulations. Roger looked like he was trying to invent teleportation on the spot. And me? I was finally finishing my toast. Linda glanced at Roger like he was about to drop some genius wisdom. He didn't. Dump this guy, Roger said, scratching his arm and sounding like he was ordering lunch. Take the business. We'll be fine. Will, huh? Cute. In under a minute, Roger had elevated himself from side piece to startup co-founder. Linda, with her flexible moral compass, nodded as if she'd been crowned queen of grifting. I'll take it, she said confidently. Ron didn't blink. He handed over the documents with the enthusiasm of someone issuing a parking fine. Initial here, signature there, he said flatly. Use a pen, not cosmetics. I handed her the business deed like I was giving away a broken blender. Best of luck with payroll. Jerry in logistics stress eats toner and cries when the copier jams. Everything wrapped up in under an hour, clean, surgical, about as warm as a tax audit. Roger, perhaps desperate to prove he wasn't entirely useless, got up and helped Linda pack. It was the most productive thing I'd seen from him. Watching him fight with a jammed suitcase zipper was the best entertainment I'd had all day, second only to canceling the Netflix account before she remembered to save the password. Minutes later, Linda strutted into the room expecting drama. Ron and I were quietly sipping bourbon like war generals. "I'm leaving," she announced, full of theatrical flair. "Bye, Linda," I replied, not looking up. Roger made a move to follow her, but I stood. "Hold it, Roger," I said. "You and I aren't quite finished." He froze mid-step. "Me?" "Yeah, you," I said. "Unless there's another Roger stuffed behind that curtain." Then, right on cue, ding-dong. The universe delivered. I opened the door to find two figures, a man who looked like he could bench press a truck, and a woman in a power suit so sharp it could double as a tool in court. "Perfect timing," I said with a smile. Ron stood, adjusting his tie. "I should go," he said, grabbing his briefcase, "before this turns into Judge Judy, home edition." He glanced back at me. "Don't break anything expensive." I smiled thinly. "Later, Ron." With that, he made his exit. Linda grabbed her delusions, and her +1. And Roger? Roger was about to learn what it meant to mess with someone trained to keep secrets and end threats. He hovered at the door, clearly regretting his entire existence. "Sit," I told him. He tried to act tough. "You don't scare me." Classic amateur move. Before I could say a word, my guy, Warmonger, stepped in. Built like a tank, he placed a massive hand on Roger's shoulder. Not aggressive. Just firm enough to make Roger suddenly remember his bones had expiration dates. Roger's legs collapsed beneath him like a folding chair with commitment issues. He didn't fall onto the couch. He crumpled to the floor, blinking up at us like someone who just realized bathtubs and electricity don't mix. I took another sip of my bourbon. "Look at that, cooperation." "You're a quick study." Then Viper moved in, silent, lethal, and with a gaze sharp enough to engrave granite. Without a word, she stepped toward Linda, wrapped her perfectly manicured fingers into that fresh-from-the-salon hair, and in a voice colder than Antarctica in January said, "Sit." Linda, who not long ago was mentally rehearsing her divorced and thriving laugh, obeyed instantly and dropped into the nearest chair like she was about to be graded by a boot camp instructor in heels. I clapped softly just once. "Perfect! Everyone's cozy, no shouting, no dramatic monologues about emotional dissatisfaction, just nice, quiet sitting." Roger's eyelids were twitching like he was trying to blink out an SOS. Unfortunately, the only one picking up signals in the room was Warmonger's clenched fist. Linda hissed, "This is maltreatment!" Viper responded with a blur of motion and delivered a slap so fast it seemed to happen in past tense. I nodded approvingly. "Linda, Viper really dislikes people who interrupt." Viper casually leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching Linda like she was calculating both the damage and the cleanup. Warmonger just stood there chewing gum like it was a stress test for his jaw. I placed my drink down and cracked my knuckles. "Now that nobody's pretending to be in charge anymore, let's have a real conversation." Roger was still on the floor, trying to arrange himself in a way that suggested he hadn't just lost all his self-worth. "Roger," I said as I swirled my glass, "were you aware that Linda was still married to me when you decided to crawl into her bed?" He paused, blinked twice, and then nodded. "Good," I said. "I value honesty, even from clowns." I stood and walked slowly toward him, each step making him straighten like he'd just heard a hawk overhead. "Did she ever bother to tell you," I continued, "that I'm ex-military?" He blinked again. "Not just military," I clarified. "Combat-hardened Marine, 5 years of hunting men who thought rules were optional." Linda, now finding her shoes more interesting than reality, avoided my gaze entirely. I turned my attention back to Roger. "Did it ever occur to you," I said, low and even, "that actions have consequences?" The silence that followed was thick, too thick to breathe comfortably through. Roger opened his mouth, maybe to justify, maybe to grovel, but before a word escaped, crack, Warmonger stepped forward and delivered a backhand that looked like it came with choreography. Roger slumped sideways, blinking like gravity just betrayed him. "Boss asked a question," Warmonger said in his usual calm, terrifying tone. I didn't even react. Roger straightened slightly, pressing one palm to his cheek as if checking for a dent. I didn't think it would come to this. And there it is, I said. Thinking, not your strong suit. You just unzip and let chaos handle the rest. I crouched slightly so we were at eye level. I've met insurgents with better morals. At least they didn't take what they couldn't survive holding on to. Roger mumbled something low, likely a desperate prayer. Sadly, divine intervention had taken the day off. I leaned back into my chair, letting the quiet take hold like a velvet noose. Roger sat rubbing his face like it owed him answers. His blinking had slowed to a dull panic rhythm. You know, Roger, I said, swirling the bourbon like it was story time, there's a rule in life. You pay before you play. I paused to let the phrase sink in. Roger looked baffled. Linda looked ready to merge with the furniture. Well, I continued, you played, gold star, but now it's time to pay. Roger sat up straighter, clearly hoping I meant a conversation and not a hospital visit. I gestured toward Warmonger, who was still standing like a mountain that could throw punches. Meet our in-house artist, I said, raising my glass. Not the paintbrush type, the kind that sculpts cartilage and bone structure. Roger's eyes widened. He once remodeled 5 enemy fighters in a cave, barehanded, no tools, just creativity and motivation. Warmonger nodded solemnly. Locals renamed it the Regret Cavern. I leaned forward and locked onto Roger's eyes. So, let's review. You knew Linda had a husband. You knew. And you still chose to play mattress tag with her while I was overseas taking care of national security. I took a sip, slow and steady. Now that's a problem for me. I believe in fairness, balance. And you threw things off. Roger had entered full panic sweat mode. His forehead gleamed like a guy auditioning to be a cautionary tale. You're not married, not engaged, don't even have a houseplant to commit to, I said, tilting my head. And I'd like to keep it that way. Roger gulped. That's why, I continued, nodding toward Warmonger. He's going to ensure you stay single, permanently. Roger's voice cracked. What does that mean? Warmonger cracked his knuckles like a man tuning a piano. Viper pulled out her phone. Want me to cue up the Heartbreak soundtrack? She asked. Only if he screams, I replied with a smile. Linda shot to her feet. Nathan, this is nuts. I turned to her, calm as a lake in winter. No, crazy was choosing a trained Marine as your husband and then cheating on him with someone who lost a fistfight with gym equipment. Roger suddenly jumped to his feet, bold, if tragically clueless, and made a move for the door. Warmonger took one deliberate step forward, just one. But it was the kind of step that said, don't. Roger opened his mouth, probably to toss out some last-ditch excuse, before freezing under Warmonger's stare, the kind of gaze that makes your courage file a resignation letter. His face went pale. His knees gave up on their responsibilities, and he slumped onto the couch, like gravity had stronger opinions than he did. Mommy, he muttered, barely audible. I raised an eyebrow. Elegant, Linda shot up in alarm, channeling every melodramatic soap opera she'd ever binged. But before she could get 3 steps in, Viper was there, cool, composed, and blocking her path with nothing but presence and authority. Sit, she said, her tone making it sound like a suggestion from someone who doesn't repeat themselves. Linda obeyed instantly, landing in the chair like the floor had voted her out. Meanwhile, Warmonger leaned in close to Roger and began calmly listing off every poor decision that led him here, like an emotional accountant tallying a debt. I stayed seated, sipping my bourbon, watching the scene unfold like it was a limited series titled Instant Karma Special Edition. After a moment, I raised my hand slightly. That's enough, Warmonger. He paused. Want me to run through consequences one more time? I waved it off. No need. I think he got the syllabus. Warmonger gave a short nod and, true to form, pulled a tiny plastic first aid kit from his pocket. The kind of kit that says, this is more symbolic than useful. Roger, looking like a man who just learned what a bad idea actually feels like, lay motionless on the carpet, blinking slowly, and probably questioning every decision since high school. Warmonger whistled a cheerful little tune, rummaged through the kit, and pulled out a cartoon Band-Aid. Dinosaurs. He knelt beside Roger, peeled the sticker with great ceremony, and in the softest, most unsettling tone said, Shh. You've been a brave little homewrecker, He gently pressed the Band-Aid to Roger's forehead, right between the regret and the reality check. There. All patched up. Then he stood up again, smiling. Not the kind of smile you'd want to see in a dark alley, but the kind you'd expect from someone who truly believes in poetic justice. I raised my brow. That's your idea of medical care? Warmonger gave a shrug. Symbolic treatment, Roger moaned. Viper clapped, slow and mocking. He looks like a pre-K dropout after a bar fight. Linda stared at Roger like she was watching a live trailer for all her worst life decisions. She didn't say a word. And me? I smiled, like I just nailed the punchline. I told you, I said. We're not villains, just passionate hobbyists with strong convictions. I stood and looked directly at Linda. She was still frozen in place, lipstick slightly smeared, hair somehow still flawless, a tragic monument to bad judgment. Her eyes met mine, wide and confused, like she'd only just realized consequences were real. So, Linda, I said, setting my empty glass down, riddle me this. She blinked, silent. Did it ever cross your mind, I asked slowly, that trying to threaten your husband might be unwise? She shook her head fast. I didn't think it would escalate like this. I sighed dramatically and long. The kind of sigh you hear from a disappointed parent watching a toddler eat sand. Exactly, I said. You didn't think. That's your problem. Every choice has a cost. And yours? I gave a cold smile. Yours just came due. She opened her mouth again, then closed it. Some growth, but far too late. I kept going. I've shown restraint tonight, I said. I really have. That's not easy for me. I stretched my arms wide like a show host welcoming contestants to revenge is right. But let's not forget, I'm also someone who holds a grudge like it's a job. Linda stiffened, the fear finally catching up to her. You lied, cheated, tried to blackmail me. You did it all under my roof, wearing diamonds I paid for, planning your escapades with Roger the Crash Dummy. Roger groaned softly from the carpet. I pointed toward Viper, who had taken up a position near the wall and was casually twirling a sharp object between her fingers like she was rehearsing a circus act for cereal butchers. Now, here's the thing about Viper, I said. She has aspirations. Linda glanced nervously at her. She dreams of running a beauty salon. Never studied for it, never got certified, but has all the enthusiasm and a steady hand. Viper pulled out a gleaming straight razor, spinning it casually. The steel caught the light like a wink from fate. And guess what, Linda? I said brightly. You're her first client. Linda's mouth dropped. You wouldn't. Oh, sweetheart, I said gently. We're way past wouldn't. Viper moved closer like a shadow with purpose. Don't move, she said softly. It's cleaner that way. And with the finesse of someone carving names into granite, the blade moved. Swift, smooth, surgical. Snip, flick, slice, precise, unforgiving. There she sat, Linda, once the reigning queen of blowouts and deluxe spa packages, now rocking a scalp smoother than a cue ball in a bowling alley. Bald, gleaming, the universe's punchline. She didn't move. Just blinked slowly like an owl hit with a stun grenade. Her hand crept up to her bare scalp, trembling. Viper casually blew across the blade like she'd just wrapped up a dramatic hair transformation. I call it the regret special. I gave a respectful nod. You really missed your calling, V. Viper wiped the blade clean with surgical precision. Oh, don't worry, she said coolly. This was just my warm-up. Linda opened her mouth to speak, but words failed her. I stepped forward and locked eyes with her. You wanted to start something, Linda, I said evenly. Now you're walking out with nothing but luggage and a breeze on your skull. I clapped, one loud, deliberate clap. Go on, enjoy the single life. You're broke, bald, and look like you just joined a minimalist cult. Bravo. Then I took my seat, crossed my legs like a man with no remaining stress, and poured myself another bourbon. Because justice, when it's served hot, deserves to be chased with something smooth. Show them the door, I said, motioning with a flick like I was dismissing a couple of underperforming interns. Warmonger didn't waste time. He wheeled Roger, now just a sack of bruises in a chair, toward the exit like he was returning a damaged appliance. Viper grabbed Linda by the elbow, with the kind of tenderness one reserves for a busted toaster. Come on, baldy locks, she muttered. What's left of you anyway? Linda snarled. Don't lay a hand on me, Viper smiled coldly. Relax. You're not worth using gloves. Out they went. Linda yelling, Roger groaning, Viper humming the Mission Impossible theme, and Warmonger throwing me a crisp salute on his way out. It could have been the ending, but the universe loves sequels. 3 weeks later, I stepped into court looking sharp. Tailored black suit, subtle paisley tie. I looked like a man who'd already won. Linda arrived looking like she'd just come from a spy movie set, silk scarf wrapped tight around her bald head, oversized sunglasses, mystery and midlife crisis dripping off her. Roger rolled in behind her like someone who'd lost a bet with fate, still in a wheelchair and wincing when anyone sneezed nearby. They sat at the table across from me, joined by a lawyer who oozed the smugness of a man paid too much to lose quietly. The judge barely looked up. "Everything's in order?" he mumbled. "No asset disputes?" Linda's attorney cleared his throat. "Correct, Your Honor. My client is receiving full rights to the business." The judge's brow lifted. "All of it?" I gave a nod and a pleasant smile. "Every inch, sir." Roger made a sound, part whimper, part chuckle. "Possibly both." The judge turned to Linda. "Mrs. Jones, do you understand the agreement?" She nodded stiffly. "Yes, Your Honor." "Very well." He stamped the papers with all the ceremony of closing a casket. "Divorce granted. Court adjourned. Gavel down. Chapter closed. Misery reassigned." I stood, buttoned my jacket. "Pleasure settling things." Linda said nothing. Roger murmured something from behind a swollen lip, maybe an apology, maybe an insult. Didn't matter. And that was that. No fireworks, no drama, just a clean, cold end. I walked out a free man. She walked out wearing a scarf, stuck with a company hemorrhaging problems, and clinging to a boyfriend who now needed 2 seat cushions just to feel normal. Not a bad Tuesday. 60 days later, I found myself standing outside the office that used to be mine. Floors still polished, doors locked, and a smile on my face wider than the time I let a raccoon loose during Linda's Pilates class. Long story. She showed up first, wrapped tight in her trademark scarf, still pretending she had secrets instead of scalp. Roger came hobbling in after her, walking like he'd lost a fight with gravity, and then lost the rematch. "I'm here to claim what's mine," she said confidently, hand out like I was supposed to bow and kiss her ring. I handed her 1 key. "Congratulations, boss." "It's all yours." She marched to the door in heels that screamed courtroom fantasy, swung it open, and froze. Silence. Beautiful, echoing silence. She turned around, puzzled. "Where is everyone?" I stepped in behind her. "Oh, you mean staff?" "Yes, Nathan, the employees." "Right. They quit." She blinked. "All of them? On a Tuesday?" "Yep, every single one gave notice last week." "Where'd they go?" I pointed across the street. A brand new office gleamed with a bright red sign that read, "Big Mama Security Services." A cartoon of my mother, armed with a rifle and a rolling pin, beamed proudly above the door. She squinted. "Big Mama?" "Yep, owned by my mother." "She's got a talent for management and cookies." Her voice cracked. "You played me." I raised a brow. "No, Linda. I delivered exactly what you asked for. You wanted the business. I gave you the business. It's empty." I smiled. "Not entirely." "Some folks are here." She squinted. "Who?" I gestured toward the conference room. "Those 3 gentlemen waiting for you? Bank reps. Been looking forward to meeting the new owner." She paled. "Why?" "Just a couple of minor debts," I said, pulling out a folded contract. "Remember this? The agreement you signed? You assumed full ownership, assets, liabilities, everything." Smiley face included. She snatched the page, scanning it with trembling hands. I leaned closer and whispered, "You didn't inherit a company, Linda. You inherited its mess." She looked at me like I'd burned her yoga mat in front of a live audience. "You set me up." I stepped toward the exit. "You set yourself up. I just filled out the paperwork." As she staggered toward the boardroom, Roger groaned from behind. "Scarf, am I still on payroll?" I smiled at him. "Sure. Ask HR." Then I hopped in my truck, gave the bank reps a little wave, and drove off to grab pie with my mom, because some wins taste like bourbon and others taste like revenge served a la mode.